Welcome into the Why You're Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast. It is episode 3, Over the Tyreek Hill and Through the Robert Woods. Crack it. Just go for it. Give it the full crack. Nice.
Terrible time.
First time on. Yep. This is what happens.
So
yeah. Rookie germs.
And this is when Burke knew it was a mistake.
So to continue along with the show, I am your host, the Monotone Master, still in first place. We also have our other co-host, the smarter than his fantasy record suggests, Brian Tambo. And we're also joined by John Rumney, who's pushing to be a co-host. We also have our guest, who is another member of our league, as I want to call him, Aiden the Undertaker, because he started off the year with his team almost like 2 feet in the grave, and he's now climbed all the way back out to third place.
I'd say we were full 6 feet down.
Yeah.
It was tough. We lost Cortland Sutton 2 days after the draft, and
Cortland Sutton.
Hey, Cortland Sutton was the number 1 wide receiver last year. If not, he was a fringe 1 too. And he was good. He was my guy.
Yeah.
AJ Brown's the top guy, but yeah.
So we are in week 12. There's 2 games before playoffs. I just want to say this for everyone listening. Defense wins championships. And what I mean by that is load up on the best defensive matchups you can if you know you're going into the playoffs. Some teams you might be looking at are the Browns or the Cardinals, who have easy end-of-season matchups if you've been defense streaming all year. Or you won't be matching up with defense with teams that are playing the Jets, Giants, and now the Bengals too, especially with the Joe Burrow injury. If you've been blessed with the Pittsburgh Steelers defense all year, your Week 15 matchup is a juicy one.
We're living life.
Yeah, so now we're going to get into our bad beats, and we got to talk about the title Over the Tyreek Hill and Through the Robert Woods. The W's has Juan goes. So this bad beat, Chris had almost a super team this week, and Juan was this heavy underdog. So he was originally projected to be crushed by Chris, and it was a great back-and-forth game. Tyreek Hill almost seemingly sealed the game for Chris with his 21.5 points. But Robert Woods came through on the Monday night game with a 24.6 to basically have Juan win 127.5 to 126.6. The biggest aspect of this game was Juan traded for Adam Thielen a few weeks ago, who scored 28.3 points in half-point PPR, which is the ultimate difference maker for this game. So I just want to talk to you guys about how do you feel about Adam Thielen rest of season? Because the past 2 weeks, he's almost put up 300 yards, and it feels like a million touchdowns.
I think that Adam Thielen's very good in the red zone. It's actually, I don't know what the stat is, but it's something like 22% of Adam Thielen's catches are a touchdown. And he's already got 11 on the season. I mean, Justin Jefferson's definitely going to take some of the target share week after week, but Thielen's going to stay consistent as long as the Vikings want to actually produce and win games. They can't just run Dalvin Cook into the ground and pray that he gets hurt. But I think that Thielen's going to keep scoring touchdowns. It was definitely a good trade, but I think he definitely probably won that over Gatsby. And now Gatsby's lost 4 in a row. So he is definitely hurting after that one.
Yeah, he's the go-to guy in the red zone. That's for sure. And I think that's a crazy stat. It's not sure if it's true. 75% of his catches in the end zone are one-handed. Pretty sure.
I do just want to bring up another player from that game, Robert Woods, who starts off the season typically as Mr. Consistent, scoring between 10 to 15 points a week. The past 4 games, though, he's either gotten you 2 points or he's gotten you 23. So he's gone from Mr. Consistent to Mr. Boomer Busts. And having stock in Robert Woods, it honestly makes me very uncomfortable having to force him in my lineup because against the better matchups, he hasn't showed up. And against matchups where you're like, there's no way he's going to break out. He just delivers a 20-point week. How do you guys feel about Mr. Woods right now?
The Seattle performance was just, it was hard.
Rough.
I'm not a owner in any Rams players, thankfully. Made that mistake last year, dealt with Goff on and off. But, yeah, like Cooper Kupp, 3 weeks ago against Miami, he had the 21 targets.
Insane.
Yeah, Robert Woods had 7 for 85 and a touchdown. And against Seattle off their bye week, you would think off their bye week they're going to be good. They're at home. They always play better at home.
Seattle's historically bad defense and also banged up defense to add to that historically bad rate. And then you're just like, Robert Woods is going to clean up. He gets like 2.5 points.
Cooper Kupp has been the same way, though. It's like Jared Goff is either Super Bowl Jared Goff or he's just the worst quarterback you'll ever see, and you don't know when that's going to happen. It's like you kind of just have to play Robert Woods and pray that he gets 20. It's kind of like DJ Moore. It's like DJ Moore gets those 3 points, and then Robert Woods also gets those 3 points, but then he also blows up for what did he get this week? 28.
It's like 27.6.
Yeah.
Not 24.6.
Yeah, you can't
Essentially won him the game.
Yeah. So now to another bad beat, which honestly probably a lot of people in multiple leagues probably got affected by one of these two guys that their opponent put in as a flex. But so Brian had 2 awful long shots against him in his loss to Andrew. Andrew started off this week not being able to set up a full lineup, and he had to pick up 3 waiver wire guys. And he would have lost if not for MVS's 47-yard bomb late in the game. And then, could you walk me through the Tim Patrick one in case someone wasn't watching this game? Because it showed up that he got a 60-yard catch. So Denver must have been trying to come back from behind or doing a Hail Mary or something on this play, right?
Yes. He threw a Hail Mary at the end of the game to waste time on the clock, and Tim Patrick magically came down with it, which is just putting the exclamation point on how my season's going. And it doesn't feel good.
No, because you really needed those 7 points, and Denver is literally, it seems like they're just running the clock out. There's 2 seconds left. He's just going to drop back and let the time run out, and he just takes that deep shot to throw it out of bounds. And you're like, oh, it's gone. No one's catching that. And then as the ball is coming down, you just see Tim Patrick extending as far as he can and just hauls it in.
Well, I want to give some props to Tim Patrick on that, because he almost fell on his face and then he kept going for another 20 yards, and we just all sat there and laughed.
This has happened to me twice actually, because the first time was against Juan, where Derek Carr had a 4th and 1 and they couldn't convert on it, so they gave the ball back when they were already winning the game, and Drew Brees had a 12-yard pass or something like that to beat me by 0.7. So that was also a bad beat as well. And it's pretty much how my season's been going. I'm probably not going to make playoffs, but I'm praying at this point that if I win out, then I'll be able to make it.
You need to make some moves.
I can't make any moves in the trade line.
just a waiver wire out there for most leagues. But
yeah, Frank Gore. Whew.
Another real bad beat, I think, comes from the Thursday night game where the Cardinals' air attack got shut down by Seattle's historically bad defense. Kyler projected 26, only got 20. Hopkins projected 17, only got 7. Kirk projected 10, only got 7. And then Dan Arnold and Chase Edmonds happened to vulture the 2 receiving touchdowns that Kyler threw that game.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I would blame most of that on the fact that Kyler got hurt pretty early in the game. His throws were not coming off well. His shoulder was hurt. They were pretty much spiraling into the ground every single time. So, I'm hoping he can heal up for next time as a Kyler Murray owner and be good for the rest of the season. But that was tough to watch.
Yeah, he basically has a mini bye week with the since he played on Thursday, he gets those extra few days to recover and rest.
Yeah, let's hope it helps.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and then another bad beat is anyone that had to play against Taysom Hill with their opponent having Taysom Hill in the tight end position. So their opponent's tight end threw for 233 yards, had 51 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns, ending in a 24.4 point game for a tight end.
Which has been changed now because it was just so ridiculous that a quarterback could be in a tight end position on ESPN. But if you leave him in as a tight end now, you will get 0 points for this week. So you need to take him out of your lineups if you have Taysom Hill in ESPN.
They changed that?
Yeah.
As we should.
It's way too unfair.
Yeah, that is absurd.
It's a cheat code. That's a league winner.
I was going to leave him in, but it told me that if I leave him in, it was just going to give me 0. And I was like, all right, I gotcha. I already won 1 game.
So now we're going to transition to the why you're wrong. We're going to go with the first pick, my pick. I want to talk about the guy we just mentioned, quarterback Taysom Hill. So he had 233 passing yards, 51 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. If it wasn't for a penalty, he could have had another 70-yard bomb touchdown to Emmanuel Sanders. And on his fumble, if he had secured that ball, he could have easily ran for another 20 yards and another rushing touchdown. But this was all versus Atlanta, the team that's the worst against quarterbacks. He finished as a QB4 for the week. My big question is this legit? I have no idea. The stat line he put up is honestly identical to what Lamar Jackson was putting up. Do we have another case where you find a diamond in the rough and you get this rushing quarterback who's just going to get you 20 points every week? Or is he going to basically just wave out and just totally get you nothing for playoff stretch?
I think it's the former. I really do, because any quarterback that is a dual threat will put up points in any league. So I think if you have him, start him. Great pickup by you. I'm kind of pissed about it, but But yeah, it's just like any dual threat quarterback. Start him if you have him.
So I think, sorry, you said something?
I was just going to say he did have a shot because you did have Winston first last week
Right.
and then changed that as soon as that announcement came out. But we also have to remember it was against Atlanta.
Right.
Like we are talking about one of historically the worst defenses over the past 5 years, passing wise. They also bomb the ball out, so you're always playing. Normally, you're playing a game that's high scoring. And granted, New Orleans defense has been unstoppable, or I guess the opposite of unstoppable the past 4 weeks. They are by far one of the best defenses in the league lately. And I don't know how much, like, you look at what they did with Teddy Bridgewater last year. Teddy Bridgewater was good for them. They used him not fully as the running capacity that Taysom Hill has been doing, but it's more of these check down type throws. Taysom Hill was throwing the ball out there, but he threw a lot of ducks.
Right.
He threw a lot of balls that were not great passes that a normal or a better defense has a chance of picking off or at least batting down and like stopping their momentum. I like Taysom Hill. I like the fact that Sean Payton went with him, especially after giving him that contract and basically saying, I gave you 2 years, $18 million. We're going to let you start. If Breeze ever gets hurt, they run Jameis. They still let Taysom start. Good for them. We'll see how it goes. But temper expectations.
Denver, Atlanta, and Philly are his next 3 games. I'd take Taysom Hill over many quarterbacks.
Right. So
that's my take.
Speaking of it, so in total, he threw 23 passes, 18 completions. That one long bomb touchdown was taken away. So next is Denver, who's actually middle of the pack versus quarterbacks. And then he has Atlanta for the next 2 games. But then when he starts playoffs, it's on the road versus Philly. Sorry, fantasy playoffs for people listening. And then he also has Kansas City, who come in at 26th and 25th. Defense is best against quarterbacks. So if Taysom Hill continues success in the next 2 weeks, there's that potential that he runs into a meat grinder week 1 of fantasy playoffs.
I've heard Drew Brees might come back in 3 weeks, which would put a big dent into that playoff push for having Taysom Hill. But the man has 11 broken ribs and collapsed lung. He's 41 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I don't know how much he wants to push that. He already knew he was going to retire at the end of this year. Is it worth pushing his body to that extent when he has his whole rest of his life to live?
Right.
That's a good
And
point.
he's obviously thought about his family over these past few years. Like he's taking these 1 year player option contracts, stuff like that, to make sure that he can get out when he wants. I don't know if it's worth putting your entire life on the line for an opportunity like that. But hey,
We'll see what happens.
Their team is good. Their defense is coming around. If they had their bad defense they started out the year with, I would say no. But now
7-game win streak.
Yeah.
he's a dog. He's been a dog for 20 plus years. He's gonna do it.
So now the transition to the next why you're wrong player. We're going to talk about tight end Dallas Goedert. This is Brian's pick. So on the year so far, he's had 31 targets for 23 receptions, 263 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In the games that he's played, he averages 8.3 points and a half PPR. He's tight end 24 in the year, drafted as the tight end 17.
I think that Dallas Goedert started off the year real hot. He had 20 points in his first week, and then ever since then, he was injured. He had less than 10 points, and then last week he finally came back and had 77 yards and a touchdown with 5 catches, which is pretty good for a tight end considering tight ends are just so bad this year. But last year, he did the same thing. He was awful to start the year, and then he had 8+ targets per game for the last 10 games of the year. And especially with Ertz coming back, I think Goedert plays way better with Ertz too. So I think that Goedert could potentially be a top 5 tight end, not saying much because Travis Kelce's the best, but he's right up there with the TJ Hawkinsons, Darren Waller's, probably on the lower end of it, but I'd take him. And I think that he's a pretty good tight end. So
since coming off the injury, so that's a 3-game total, 13 targets, 10 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. That's 13% of the market share for Carson Wentz. If you take away that first game he's coming off injury, that bumps up to 16%, as you highlighted to me. Are you worried about the other Eagles skill positions players coming back? Or maybe Alshon Jeffrey gets a little bit more looks. Jalen Reagor, off the injury, has gotten a lot more looks. But I'd say you believe with Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert will be even more productive.
I believe that with all these targets coming back, Carson Wentz is already just so bad to begin with that more weapons will allow him to throw to these guys. And then once he starts throwing to these guys, they're going to realize that the tight end's wide open and Goddard's going to start catching more touchdowns. I mean, Wentz can't even throw a ball more than 20 yards without throwing an interception. So might as well throw it 10 yards to your tight end and let him run for 30 yards like he was doing last week. So
Wentz is historically bad this year.
Very bad.
Let's just go with that. There's reports out there that he's completely given up. They drafted another quarterback in the second round. His team's falling apart. He had literally no weapons to start off the entire year. They brought in a guy off the street, Travis Fulgham, who was a absolute monster for a couple weeks. And look at that. They bring back a few more guys, and Fulgham falls off the map. And Wentz also forgets how to play football. Just around that time, then he starts getting more weapons. Maybe he feels a little more confident, and
Don't
it still doesn't help.
downplay. They're the best team in the NFC East, so.
They really set the tone.
They did.
And
371.
speaking of the next wire on candidate, running back Austin Ekeler. This is Aiden's pick. So on the year, he's had 49 attempts for 248 yards and a touchdown. And he's also had 17 targets, which he's caught all of for 144 yards. He averages about 13.4 points per game. He's running back 51 on the year. Now, this is due to the injury that he sustained in week 4. But he was drafted as the running back 13. So if you took him, he's been a giant chain ball on your roster, probably sitting in the IR spot. But he's projected to come back soon. So, Aiden, how do you feel about him?
Well, all right. So week 10, a week and a half ago, Austin Ekeler makes a statement, or probably about 2 weeks ago now, makes a statement. When fans know he's on his way back. He's trickling some message out there. We haven't heard anything from him since. There's reports that he's coming off of he's on not on the active roster, but he's able to practice in that. So he's back at practice again this week. I expect him to play. I don't know in what role. It's probably going to be limited early. The man's coming off of a pretty serious injury. But I want to go back to last year's stats a little bit. So who do you think is the top two catching running back, or top three catching running backs in the NFL?
Alvin Kamara, Austin Ekeler.
Any running back that is on Phillip Rivers' team. That's what I think.
All right, who are the other two that you would think?
Well, it's definitely Alvin Kamara and Austin Ekeler are 1 and 2. And then there's probably a third would be...
Todd Gurley used to be up there, but I wanted to count last year's production in there.
What team?
We're forgetting about the white man that...
Oh, Christian McCaffrey,
yeah.
McCaffrey.
So Christian McCaffrey. So we're talking about those three. Yeah. White man can't jump. Austin Ekeler is actually the best out of all these guys. He is the most efficient with catching. He catches 85% of his passes. Last year, he put up 92 catches for 108 targets, 92 catches for 993 yards. CMC had 142 targets. That is about 34 more than Ekeler. Had 116 of those for catches, so that's only 81% of those for catches. This year he's up to 89%. The year before he was at like 85%, so I'm not going to knock him on his efficiency. He's had a bunch of different quarterbacks thrown to him. That's that. But he only put up 1,005 yards catching. That is, 8, 6, 14, 24 more catches and only 12 more yards. Kamara, 81 catches on 97 targets for 553. That is 11 less catches for 450 less yards. What Ekeler can do when he gets into the open field is actually pretty mind-blowing, seeing that he's doing this over guys who we would say are top-of-the-line generational type players. Last year, he was held back by having Melvin Gordon there. The year before, there was still Melvin Gordon, who was even more of a Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon wasn't in for the first 4 games of last year. Austin Ekeler had the bulk of it. He's not the greatest runner. I'll give you that. He's like 4.2 average. This year, he's having his best running season. He was averaging 5.1 before he left. 12 carries a game for about 62 yards. Not great if you want a star running back, but you're not asking for Nick Chubb. You're asking for more of a Kareem Hunt who can come out and get 7-8 catches for you. That's an Austin Ekeler.
Who was his quarterback last year?
It was Phillip Rivers. Check down king.
Justin Herbert's not a check down king.
Nope. He's a gunslinger.
He is, though, because Josh Kelly is getting all these catches now. Justin Jackson's getting all these catches. You have these guys coming out getting these catches. He's more of one than Tyrod Taylor was.
Right. So I love all those points. A lot of those stats are why I also took Austin Ekeler in another league. That's why I'm invested in the hopefulness that he comes back. But so far this year, I was looking at what was his snap count. So I think one of the issues we both had was who's this Joshua Kelly character on the field. So through the first 3 weeks, he had 65% of the snaps. And then you can look at that first game. Well, Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback. They had a completely different system with Tyrod. Ekeler had an awful week 1. But with the 2 games that Ekeler had with Herbert, he was averaging 21.3 points per game and a half-point PPR. But then he had this awful injury. So he's actually expected to resume practice this week. And that also kind of bothered me because I want to be like, his hamstring wasn't just like a hamstring injury. It literally looked like it fell off the bone injury. So I did some research earlier today. I was on a website called 4for4. They released this article in 2018 explaining different kinds of injuries that affect different kind of positions. From what it was kind of saying, you can expect an 8 to 10% drop off in production coming off the injury. But it kind of depends how the team tags the player going into the game. If the player has a probable tag, you won't see a decline. But if it has a questionable tag going to the game, the player historically has a 12.9% decline in performance. So the thing is, I think if you have to play Ekeler, especially if you need the win, if you know other option, you got to take that risk of playing him coming off of injury, maybe in limited capacity. But I actually kind of want to ask you guys a general question. If you could tilt, I have got like 3 names that you might have picked off of waivers or drafted later in the draft. Would you guys rather go with Austin Ekeler this week or Duke Johnson versus Detroit?
I'm still going Ekeler.
I own Duke Johnson, and I would go Austin Ekeler.
Yeah. Duke Johnson has had his chance many a time.
So inefficient.
But he, even against the worst rushing defense.
It's the targets is the only reason why he's startable. It's because he gets 98% of the snaps, and that's the only reason why he does. Right. He is not good. He is not a good football player whatsoever. Gets like 1.9 yards a carry. I watch every single time when there's a carry, it's 1 yard. 1 yard. He catches one for like 5 yards.
What about Antonio Gibson versus Dallas?
I'd rather Antonio
Gibson.
As Austin Ekeler, how would you feel about that?
For this week,
I'd
take Antonio Gibson for the rest of the season. I'd probably want Ekeler.
Ekeler is still on the IR, but he would be playing Buffalo this week.
Come playoffs, I think I'd rather have Ekeler than Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, see, this is the first week with him back. What I want to know with that stat that you read off earlier about the people coming back and being like 12% or 8 to 12% down, how many weeks did those running back or those players have off between the injury and that? Because this is a very long stint. Like normally you don't see a hamstring injury cause a guy to be out from week 4 to week 12, week 13. I feel like they've given him all the time possible for him to come back because they do have those 3 other guys they can have. They brought Kalen Balazs, who's done decently well. Picked him up. He's helped me do a win last week. But obviously temper your expectations, but I think, so Gibson for that question. Yeah. I would say Gibson this week.
Yeah. One last name, James Robinson versus Cleveland.
I like James Robinson.
I do like James Robinson.
He gets a lot of touches. I would probably start him just because you can't trust Ekeler.
Yeah, we're just talking about this 1 week because he's coming. If you had the ability to tilt to have the wait and see game,
I would go James Robinson.
I would go James Robinson. He's a workhorse back, and you saw Fournette last year and Fournette this year. Clearly, something Jacksonville does makes the running backs beast.
I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now onto our 4th player, wide receiver Travis Fulgham. This is John's pick. 56 targets, 31 receptions for 451 yards and 4 touchdowns. Averages 12.1 points per game. He was the wide receiver 45 on the year and basically went undrafted in every single league.
Yep. I'm coming at both these guys nuts here, Aiden and Brian. Aiden's got him in our league, and Brian's got him in another league we're in. Here's a stat for you. Travis Fulgham, between weeks 4 and 8, the number 1 wide receiver. Did you guys trust him? I know Aiden did.
Oh, 100%.
I know Aiden's like wide receiver 1 rest of the way. No receiver on Carson Wentz's team is ever a wide receiver 1. Ever.
Hey, when you have literally 0 other weapons, including not even a Miles Sanders, when Boston Scott's your starting running back, and Travis Fulgham is your number 1 wide receiver with no one behind him, I'll take Travis Fulgham.
Yeah, throw him in as wide receiver 3. But he has had a total of 12 targets for 2 catches and 16 yards. 1 catch in the past 2 weeks. Yeah. How are you feeling now?
He went one with 7 targets last week for 8 yards. I kind of knew this was going to happen. I haven't started him in either of the last 2 weeks. Thankfully, I have Antonio Brown. Nice pickup. Brandon Cooks has been a monster again, and J.D. McKissick has he's been a holder for my flex spot. But yeah,
Right.
Fulgham,
We're gonna stay in the realm of Fulgham for the moment. So speaking on the point John made, so when he was the only option in Philadelphia, this is between weeks 5 to 7 mostly. He went for 34 targets, 21 catches, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and had 28% of the passing volume in Philly. Then once the others came back, weeks 8, 10, 11, he's only had 19 targets, 8 catches, 94 yards, and 1 touchdown, dropping from 28% to 19% market share. So that's concerning. But he has a very juicy end-of-season schedule for receivers. 3 of his 5 matchups are against defenses that are in bottom 10 of the league at defending wide receivers.
Yeah, I can never trust Carson Wentz. Did you see his interception last game?
I did.
That pick six? How can you ever start a receiver that is catching passes from him?
Right.
I am sitting atop in our other league at 8-3 in first place, and I own Travis Fulgham, and I have started him the past 2 out of 3 weeks. Luckily, I have won those 3 weeks, all of them. But he is the worst player I've ever seen in my life, and I have no faith in him with Carson Wentz under center.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of,
he's almost droppable.
Yeah, no, he is almost droppable. Listeners out there will learn there are 3 quarterbacks I hate in this league. 2 of which were in the Super Bowl team that beat the Patriots back in, what was it, 2017? Yeah, Nick Foles, 2018 Carson Wentz, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Those 3 are on my hate list, and it will continue that way for the rest of my days.
What if we get Jimmy G back this offseason? There's a lot of rumors out there that Sam Darnold might be ending up in San Francisco.
Then I don't know.
Back to loving him.
So now to continue with Travis Fulgham. Are you guys ready to play a game?
Oh,
yeah.
Great.
Born ready.
So no stats allowed to look up. I've got the numbers in front of me. This is your gut feelings. This is you testing your I think I know what I'm talking about fantasy football knowledge. So first round is Travis Fulgham or Odell Beckham. So targets per game, who has more, Travis Fulgham or Odell Beckham?
Travis Fulgham.
Travis Fulgham.
It is Fulgham with 8 compared to Odell's 7.3. Now to the listeners, these are the games that they played in, not on the year. So this is not affecting games they didn't play or got injured in.
Okay.
So who has more yards per game on average?
Odell had like a crazy game. I'm going with Odell.
I'm going to go
I think
Fulgham.
Fulgham.
It's Odell Beckham, but it's close. Odell's at 65.1 to Travis Fulgham at 64.4.
So they're just
Fulgham had like
both irrelevant
5
players.
90-plus games in a row.
Who has more fantasy points per game?
Well, let's see. Fulgham had
Odell.
like nothing to start off the year for 5 games. I'd say Odell.
So these are if he didn't this kind of doesn't look at Fulgham's games, which he didn't actually play in yet.
Oh, it's only the games that he played?
Yeah.
Oh, Fulgham.
Going Odell.
I'm going to go Odell.
It is Odell with 10.6 to Fulgham's 9.9.
All right.
Do I get a reward for going 3 for 3?
You get a crisp high five.
Yeah. Woohoo!
All right. Here's another name that's in the same wide receiver spectrum on the year. Chris Godwin. So who do you think has more targets per game?
Fulgham.
Fulgham.
Godwin.
It is Fulgham. Chris Godwin only has 6.8 per game. Who has more yards per game?
Fulgham.
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 It is Chris Godwin at 68.6.
This one Godwin.
0 for 3 for the boys.
Who has more points per game?
Godwin.
Godwin.
Fulgham.
It's Godwin. 12.1.
What does Godwin have on the average?
Godwin comes in, Godwin's average points per game is 12.1, but because of the injuries and the games he hasn't played in, Chris Godwin is the wide receiver 44 in the year, while Travis Fulgham sits at 45.
That makes sense. Damn, so they're one spot separating Chris Godwin, the number 5 wide
Top
receiver
one
last year, and Travis Fulgham, the undrafted guy who came out of nowhere.
Exactly.
To save the Eagles, maybe one win earlier this year.
So now we got our third player on the board. Travis Fulgham or Juju Smith-Schuster?
Oh, God.
I like this.
Who has more targets per game?
Travis Fulgham.
Fulgham.
It's Fulgham. Juju only has 7.5.
Couldn't have
There
been
was so
any
many
more
nuts.
confident
Yeah,
about
I'm
that.
So many
Cried
nuts defeating
throughout.
Pittsburgh.
Who has more yards per game?
Fulgham.
Juju.
Juju.
It is Fulgham. Juju only has 53.5.
Why are you trying to go with the voice? You own Juju, so you know.
Yeah, no, I know.
I know he's bad, but like,
I'm just trying to hold back
Who
tears
has
here.
more points per game?
Fulgham.
Juju.
Fulgham.
It is Fulgham.
Wow,
Juju
Juju's
only
had like
has-
5 straight
No.
weeks of
Yeah,
15.
he's only had 11.5.
Oh my god.
So that can transition to the next segment, the hard to swallow pills, with John's pick, wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. So Juju on the year has 75 targets, 58 receptions, 535 yards, 5 touchdowns, but only averages 10.5 points per game. He's the wide receiver 23 on the year, drafted as the wide receiver 11.
Yeah. So, in another league that has a lot of weight and a lot of care coming from my end, I think it was before week 3, right before week 3, I made a trade. It was Cam Newton, Keenan Allen for Juju Smith-Schuster, DeAndre Swift, and Drew Brees. Okay, I got DeAndre Swift out of that. But watching Keenan Allen do what he's done all year and watching Juju just poop the bed every single week makes me want to cry. So since that trade, Juju Smith-Schuster is the number 31 ranked receiver with a total of 84.3 points, an average of 10.5 a game. Keenan Allen is the number 2 ranked receiver, 137.2 points, an average of 17.2 points per game. It's terrible. I try to turn off TV in the 4 o'clock games, which is generally when Keenan Allen plays, and I just want to cry.
I feel like any fantasy analyst out there said, make sure you have Keenan Allen at the end of the year because his matchups for week 14, 15, and 16 are just unreal. And if you have to trade away Juju or to get Juju for Keenan Allen, that's just...
Yeah, in my defense, this was just before Tyrod Taylor got stabbed in the lung by his trainer, right? How was I supposed to know that he would get stabbed by his own personnel?
I've got some numbers to go at you, John, because right about when you made that trade is when something shifted in the Pittsburgh offense. So the worst week into the year was the same game as Claypool's breakout.
Yep.
Juju had 4 catches that game. Claypool had 4 touchdowns. So in the first 4 weeks, which was 3 games due to them having an early bye, Juju was averaging 6.3 targets, 53 yards, and 1 touchdown per game, having him sit around 14.8, which I'm pretty sure was in the top 10 for wide receivers. So if you drafted him, it was feeling pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Since Claypool's breakout, which has been 7 games, he's honestly averaged more targets. He's at 8 targets per game now. Averages the same amount of yards, but had a 75% drop off in how many touchdowns he get. Claypool basically came in and stole all of Juju's touchdowns.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. And the what I was thinking is a couple years ago, Juju had a hell of a year behind Antonio Brown. Last year, he had a crap year because Roethlisberger wasn't playing, obviously. But Juju's a young guy. I think he's 23 years old, 22 years old. I figured it was his time to shine. And I guessed horribly wrong, and I pay for it every day of my life.
You know who's better out of all 3 of those?
Deontay Johnson. Yeah, that's unfortunately for Juju. Claypool stole all of his Juju.
What was Claypool's first game that he played? Because he didn't play the first few games of the year, did he? He was playing, but he had 1 touchdown, I think, in week 2, like a long breakaway touchdown, and every analyst was like, "You should pick him up," and then he broke out 2 weeks later. All right, so if we take away, let's say week 5 is when we first start talking about Claypool. So what, he had 9 targets before that. Claypool has 56 targets since that date, and Juju has, take away the first 3 weeks, 6, 8, 5, 11, 19. Juju only has 56.
What week?
Week 5. So Claypool's first big week was week 5.
How many targets?
He had 11 targets that game, but he had 9 before that. So take off 9 from 65, that's 56. They both have 56 targets since that date.
And another thing I'd like to mention
Deontay Johnson also has 56 targets with a game where he had 0 points too.
Mm-hmm.
So we went from Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell being by far the only two guys really producing on that team to a wide receiver room that is dominated by 3 different guys who can all do little things but are all monsters in their own way.
One other thing I'd like to mention, sorry, John, but it was Juju's birthday on Sunday. The man had 19 yards.
You're trying to match his numbers.
He's still dancing. Yeah. He's still dancing on that team logo at midfield before games.
You want to match his number.
Feed the man on his birthday. That's all I'm saying.
To move on to like another player who needs someone to feed the ball to be relevant, quarterback Matt Ryan. This is your pick, Ryan. On there, he's thrown for 2,978 yards, thrown for 15 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, to also tack on a rushing touchdown, 2 fumbles. Averages 18.5 points per game, but it doesn't really feel like that. It's the QB 13 on the year, drafted as the QB 10.
I hate Matt Ryan with all my life. I have Josh Allen, thank God. He's my quarterback, and I had to start Matt Ryan this week just because Josh Allen was on bye. But Matt Ryan had the worst game he's had all season. I could have started Joe Flacco and would have won my fantasy game, but I started Matt Ryan, who got 7.28 points at the quarterback position. That is awful. My tight end got more than him. It's like, it was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It's just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. I know Matt Ryan's not this bad because he plays well when he's at home and he plays well only when he's at home.
He plays well when Julio Jones is in the lineup
and when Julio's in the lineup too. But his stats at home are crazy versus when he's away, and I think that's what killed him.
No, it's directly correlated to when Julio Jones is in the lineup. As soon as he got hurt is when he started playing poorly.
That's a fair point.
He's rated the 3 games that Julio's missed. It's like 23rd, 25th, and 28th for quarterbacks. That's how he finishes in those fantasy weeks.
Yeah. So with Julio Jones on the field, Matt Ryan averages 22.4 points per game. Without Julio Jones, now one of these was against Chicago, but without Julio Jones, he averages 9.9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those are numbers don't lie.
I trust J.D. McKissick to get me more points than Matt Ryan on those weeks.
Right.
And they have no run game, too, because Todd Gurley's knee breaks every, 2 minutes?
Hey, Todd Gurley has not missed a single game this year.
No, but he sits on the sidelines.
Until they need him
to take the production.
He sits on the sidelines until they need him to just fall into the end zone.
Todd Gurley is an enigma this year. Let me speak on Todd Gurley for a minute.
He's been good. We can't hate on him.
He's been really good solely because they feed him all around the goal line.
Touchdown dependent.
Yeah, super touchdown dependent. But he gets like 20 carries a game, which is crazy. And he's averaging 2-3 yards a carry. They just keep feeding the man. I'm not sure why, but as a fantasy owner in another league, I do not complain.
Yards, yeah. No,
when you pay him the money, you kind of have to feed him.
Yeah.
Even though his knee might be broken.
Fair.
So another pill that's hard to swallow, because I know a bunch of us at this table have stock in this player in different leagues. We're going to talk about my pick, tight end Noah Fant. So on the year, he has 58 receptions, 39 targets, 422 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But only averages 8.4 points per game. It's a tight end 13 on the year, drafted as a tight end 12. And at the beginning of the year, when unfortunately Courtland Sutton went down for a season-ending injury, all the lights lit up for Noah Fant to have this amazing year as the only big guy option in Denver. Which it seemed like he really struck gold if you drafted him late, because the first 2 weeks, he was the tight end 3 on the year with 11 targets, 9 catches, 138 yards, and 2 touchdowns, averaging 16.2 points per game. But since he's suffered through injuries that keep on haunting him all year, he's fallen to the tight end at 19, averaging 6.7 targets, 40 yards a game, and has not found the end zone since week 2. Which is just, how do you guys feel about a guy who has all the potential and talent to be a high-scoring tight end, but his injuries have prevented him from being anything relevant this year?
2 words. Drew Lock.
See, I like Drew Lock.
Drew Lock's a good player. Don't hate on Drew Lock.
I was in Colorado last year when these two came in and started to break out, and Drew Lock took over in week 9 or 10 last year. I can't remember. I'm trying to find that right now. But Noah Fant was a huge contributor of that. Noah Fant and him had a good relationship going into it. And yeah, so Drew Lock started in week 12. No Fant immediately put up. Oh no, that was a bad game for him. The very next game was 4 for 4 and 113 yards and a touchdown. He had this. I remember it was like this breakout catch was like 70 yards or something. It was like the breakout for him. 56 the next week and then nothing. But yeah, coming in this week, they had the connection. Drew Lock got hurt, or no Fant got hurt. They brought him back. I don't know if it was too early or they pushed him over too hard. He has not looked the same since. And Drew Lock is obviously playing with a broken rib right now. Already dealt with another injury earlier this year. They lost Sutton. Their defense is a bit a mess because they lost guys early in the year before the year even happened. I think that team just needs a full reset of the year and maybe Drew Lock or Fant next year. But yeah, it's been tough to own him.
I'll give Drew Lock a little bit of credit, but I think that Noah Fant is Evan Ingram just a little bit better in terms of yards because he gets catches and yards but does not score. I've had Noah Fant on my roster in my other league, my first place team, by the way, and I've had Hunter Henry too, and I've started Hunter Henry every single week over Noah Fant just because Hunter Henry catches touchdowns and Noah Fant doesn't. That's my take.
Fair point.
Yeah, if that offense could get the ball down the field a little bit better. Like Jerry Jeudy's somewhat taking a back burner after the first few weeks of breaking out. Tim Patrick's been their number one wide receiver. You don't want Tim Patrick as your number one wide receiver. Like don't get me wrong, good wide receiver. He's not a number one wide receiver, and that the whole entire team is just it just looks like an absolute mess. They lost. They beat Miami. Not really sure how they beat Miami because Tua was looking legit. I really like Tua.
That defense was looking legit.
But yeah,
I think Tua only had like 83 passing yards going into like the fourth quarter.
Yeah, there's a reason Fitzmagic came in, and Fitzmagic almost did it.
Yep,
almost did it.
90-something yards.
I think the defense remembered he only throws Devontae Parker, and so they remembered that one time in the red zone.
Hey, that saved me a win this week, and that's all that matters in the end. That was huge. I didn't even care that they intercepted the ball. I just cared that he did not catch that ball, and that was great. So yeah, Drew Lock walks around with that swagger. He's doing the little struts out there. Like, he's going to be a good quarterback. I got faith in him. I think that team just needs a little bit more stability and some guys to stay healthy and have a full year of trying to grow together.
So that brings us to our last point, this last hard to swallow pill. Now, this has been this fantasy team has been rough to deal with. We're talking about the Bucs. Their air attack has been frustrating to deal with because you have all the talent, Gronk, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, but Brady can't feed all of them every single week. But then they also have another issue running the ball. So we're going to talk about running back Leonard Fournette, who's Aiden's hard to swallow pick. On the year, he has 66 attempts for only 261 yards and 3 touchdowns. But surprisingly, he has 34 targets for 25 receptions, 161 yards. Averages 6 points per game. So the running back 39 on the season when people were taking him as the running back 20.
All right, so he was signed. He got released by Jacksonville pretty late in the offseason. Like the offseason was short to start. We had no preseason. Obviously, you had a combination of a lot of ACL injuries and that, like 15 plus that we have this year. But Leonard Fournette came in a week and a half before. Everyone knew, okay, he's not going to be that guy right away, but it's still Leonard Fournette. Like we saw this guy at LSU. He's a monster. I think we also forget the fact that he looked like a 30-year-old man amongst a bunch of children running around out there. And I think that's contributed to a lot of what he's done in the NFL and not lived up to expectations. But to diverge off that, week 1, he was on the field for about 10% of the plays, 5 carries, 5 yards, 1 catch for 14. Week 2, he exploded. He had the 103 on 12 attempts with 2 touchdowns. One of those was like a 46-yard burst that he exploded right through the middle of the line for. He looked good. I thought he was about to take over. Week 3, nothing. Got hurt. Missed a couple games. Came back. He had a few good outings, but you can't even read it. It's not even like, oh, one guy's going to be there when they're winning. One guy's going to be the main guy when they're losing. Like, you look at these games, they've lost games where Leonard Fournette's been more of the guy. They've won games where Leonard Fournette's been more of the guy. And the opposite as well. Like, you don't know who to trust in this backfield anymore. And going back to what I said earlier about Jacksonville, just knowing what they're doing with running backs, James Robinson he's actually done better than Leonard Fournette was doing all last year in Leonard Fournette's best year in the NFL, and where everyone thought that Leonard Fournette was one of the top 5 running backs. James Robinson is a undrafted rookie guy who is doing literally better than Leonard Fournette was doing in that same offense last year. I don't want to say that Leonard Fournette was a direct contributor of Jacksonville being so bad at the quarterback position. They lean so heavy on the running back. But James Robinson's opportunity share is 84.5. Leonard Fournette went from having a 90% opportunity share last year to a 44 now. And he's one of these guys that you look at his stats, first 10 carries, he's not as good. Most running backs get better if they get more carries a game. Leonard Fournette literally jumps from like 3.5 yards a carry to over like 7 or 8.
Right. So
and he's just not getting the looks, and this backfield is just killing me.
Yeah. So I was looking into this because I feel like the Bucs backfield has the problem. There's 2 bulls in the locker room. And with Bruce Arians, typically, once he plays running back and once the running back makes a mistake, if you miss a blocking assignment with Brady or if you fumble, I'm going to the other back the rest of the game, which has always been Ronald Jones' issue. But so far in the year, Ronald Jones is the running back 13, while Fournette's the running back 39. So I was trying to look at the snap counts for each of these players through the season so far, and I took out the games where Leonard Fournette was hurt. So the difference between the two on the year, Ronald Jones has had 40% of snaps, Leonard Fournette's had 47%, but Ronald Jones has 12.8 carries compared to Leonard Fournette's 8.25. Leonard Fournette does have the edge in the passing game with 4.25 targets per game to Ronald Jones' 2.75. But this is the part where it actually gets really hard because yards per game, Ronald Jones is at 62.7, Leonard Fournette's at 52.7. And they both have an equal amount of touchdowns at the year, averaging 0.375 touchdowns per game. And their average points per game is about 8 points a game for Ronald and 7.5 to 6, depending on format, for Leonard Fournette. So they're basically almost identical. You just wish they were both combined into one back for fantasy.
It'd be really nice. There was a week, 3-4 weeks ago, Ronald Jones had that fumble very early in the game. It's like, okay, Bruce Arians hates that. He will take him out. Leonard Fournette's going to be the guy. Leonard Fournette ended up getting like 3 fantasy points that game. Ronald Jones was out for the next 3 drives in a row.
99-yard touchdown.
Yeah, it was just absolutely insane. But yeah, you would think that's how it's going to work. I don't know if it's Tom Brady having some influence, but you would think that if Tom Brady had influence, then Leonard Fournette would be the guy. Like, Tom Brady is the guy who vouched for bringing Leonard Fournette. He's guys who vouched for Leonard Fournette, for Antonio Brown. Like, he wants these guys with him. He thinks these guys are dogs and he likes them. But Ronald Jones ran away weeks 4, 5, 6. He had the 120 plus in all 3 of those weeks that Lenny was hurt. But yeah, it's just an absolute mess. It's like the Browns backfield.
You can't trust that backfield just because the target share is so 50-50. But I do have to say that Brady is 0 for 7 on primetime football. Therefore, if they're losing games, the passing back with the stats that you just provided is Leonard Fournette. So if you're ever going to start Leonard Fournette and trust him in fantasy, put him in on a primetime game.
I don't know.
Or else, sit him.
This past game, he dropped 3 of his 4 attempts.
But he still was in there and scored a touchdown.
Yeah, he got a nice 1-yard touchdown. It was
still saved his day.
Yeah,
he's still there on the passing downs because Ronald Jones can't catch a pass to save his life, but clearly can't Fournette. So that's why the Bucs are just a terrible team right now.
Yeah, it's a shot in the dark for each.
Yeah.
Realistically,
they're just
it could be they're going to play the hot hand regardless. There's really no way for a fantasy owner to guess, in my opinion.
I got more faith in starting both of the Browns running backs on the same exact team than I would starting one of the 2 Tampa Bay running backs.
Absolutely. As would any.
So, speaking of shots in the dark, we're past our trade deadline, so the only way you can add to your team is through the waiver wire. So we're going to get ready to drop some waiver wire wisdom. I'm talking about players that are rostered in 60% or less of leagues, so there's more of a chance that these guys are out there versus sitting on someone's bench. We're going to start off with some wide receivers. Some names that I've put it out that suggested that if someone really needed a shot in the dark, they could take. First one is Jalen Reagor, plays for the Eagles. He's only rostered in 28% of leagues. Averages about 6 targets a game since he came back. It's a very juicy schedule for Eagles players going forward. But the problem is there's other Eagles options that are coming back. Another one is Bashad Perryman, plays for the Jets, owned in 11% of leagues. His last 2 games, he's at 155 yards and 3 touchdowns. His negative side, he's clearly a big boomer bust player. Now, another boomer bust I want to talk about is Nelson Aguilar, owned in 19% of leagues. His last 3 games has had 221 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's just the boomer bust guy. It's going to be Henry Ruggs or Nelson Aguilar in that deep bomb. Another one owned in 45% of leagues. Sterling Shepard plays for the Giants. Next 4 games are against bottom 10 pass defenses, but the problem is which Giants wide receiver is going to get the touchdown?
I don't trust any of them.
Darius Slayton.
You'd say that, but Darius Slayton last year did the same exact thing that he did early this year before Shepard came back. Same exact thing happened last year. Slayton was the guy. Shepard comes back. He loses his targets. Shepard gets his 7 to 9 targets a game. And Slayton's either a guy that's going to get big boom, or he's going to be absolute bust because he's just not getting that same target share when Shepard's not.
You ever find me starting a Giants wide receiver? Just kick me out of the league.
No, Sterling Shepard is the go-to guy.
You were starting Slayton earlier this year. Don't even say that.
First game of the year, and I won because he dropped 21 points somewhere.
You trying to say he was the man.
If someone was trying to add a wide receiver to their roster out of Rager, Perryman, Aguilar, Shepard, how would you rank them?
So I got Aguilar on my list. I don't think I have any of the rest though.
I would do. You said Aguilar's in there.
Yep.
I would do Sterling Shepard, Aguilar, Perryman, Rager.
That's my exact.
Yeah, I'm with him. I had Perryman at the end of last year when he was with Tampa.
Rager and
Obviously,
Perryman.
it's Tampa and Jameis Winston versus Adam Gase.
Who
and,
is
Sam
the
Darnold.
quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, Brian?
Who's
Do we have to go over this again?
Yeah. Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Flacco at least can heave the ball downfield a little bit.
Hey, Rashad Perriman took off right around this time last year. He's the reason I won that championship.
Neither is
AJ
great.
Brown.
Let's go with that.
Neither is great, but if you need a big boom bust guy and you don't care about losing and you want a big win, go ahead.
Hey, this segment is for what waiver wire. It's for when you're on buys. It's when you're really scrapping for some points. I agree. I think those guys would be good starts as the wide receiver 3.
All right, so when you don't have, all right, so I know it's 60% cut off from Michael Pittman from Indy is 58% available.
Owned on Thal's team.
Yeah, he's on Thal's team, but he's 58% available for other leagues. He's a guy, he's a rookie, didn't get his shot early. They lost, can't remember that other wide receiver they had there early who got hurt. It was his second year. T.Y. Hilton's obviously not the guy anymore. It seems like Philip Rivers has started to love him a lot more. I think that Pittman's a good guy to have. And then Rashad Higgins in Cleveland. He has the connection with Baker. He's been there since 2016. Baker's been there since 2018. So that's 3 years. He's shown the upside. He's just never gotten full opportunities. They brought in OBJ. They have Jarvis Landry. He's the number 2 guy. The past 2 weeks, he's had 4 catches each, but he's put up like 50, 60 yards in those, and that's in brutal weather conditions. I think he's a guy that they have to rely on if they need to go to a passing attack. Clearly with Hooper and Njoku deal with injuries and stuff like that. Like they have their run game, but they need to pass at some point. I think Rashad Higgins available in 88% of leagues might be a guy to go get to.
Right, because Baker does have that desire to throw to the tight end, but if both his top tight ends are injured, then he's got to find a new guy, and Rashad Higgins could be that guy.
Yeah, and you would have thought Hooper would have been that guy, but I own him too. He just hasn't really shown that fully this year like he did last year in Atlanta. So
one other guy I'd like to mention is Russell Gage. Watch out for Julio Jones being out this week. He had 12 targets last week. He would be the number 2 guy behind
Mr. Ridley.
Calvin Ridley. Yeah, it's he's a good streamer if Julio's out.
Yeah.
Or go crazy with McCole Hardman, who has dropped double-digit points and could drop double-digit points at any given time if Patrick Mahomes just decides to close his eyes and throw it up and doesn't realize it's Tyreek Hill, but it's really McCole Hardman. It's a touchdown.
Hey, if you want to go real crazy, you got Demir Bird and N'Keal Harry.
Oh, God, don't do that.
You do know that Newton played with Bird down in Carolina. You got a little bit of something with him, clearly.
So,
every other game.
We're going to move on to some running backs. So in an 8-man league, I saw this name fall the waivers, and I literally couldn't figure out if I wanted to pick him up or just leave him there. But if this guy was dropped in your league, he deserves to be on someone's bench. I saw someone drop Jonathan Taylor. He just kind of came back to life, but you can't ever trust a Colts running back right now. But if you need to just take a shot in the dark on someone and he's on waivers, you should be going for him. Some names I want to bring up is Gus Edwards for the Ravens. He's owned in 28% of leagues.
Yep.
Right now, he's the only running back standing in Baltimore due to Ingram and J.K. Dobbins being out with COVID. But it would definitely be just a 1 week play. Once those other two guys come back, you wouldn't be able to trust any of the three of them. You can pick up Frank Gore on the Jets. He's only in 10% of the leagues, but since LaMichael Pirine just got hurt, he's the only running back standing in New York, and last week that translated to 71 yards and a touchdown. He gets the carries, but he's only found the red zone once this year. And if David Montgomery doesn't play, you could take that giant shot on Cordell Patterson. He's owned in 7% of leagues. He's a gadget player who gets touches. He got 49 yards and a touchdown. But the negative part is he's a gadget player because who knows with Matt Nagy? No one has any idea.
He also, last game when they didn't have Montgomery, I'm pretty sure, I was looking at stats earlier, they had, 7 carries for 15 yards or something. A lot of those yards were through the passing game, which he's obviously been more of a wide receiver, return specialist than a running back, but he's always been used on any team he's been on. It's just, that Bears, once they lost Tariq Cohen, that team just fell apart completely.
Yeah.
He was somewhat saving them with a check down guy, and there's nothing there anymore.
I saw in one of my leagues Joe Mixon get dropped, which I think is ludicrous because he could be back for playoffs. As a Joe Mixon owner in one of my other leagues, I'm stashing him because hoping I make the playoffs and I can throw him in week 13, 14. I don't know. What do you guys think?
What about J.K. Dobbins out for 1 week? And he just got 15 carries last week. And
he's definitely a smash pickup if the other guys don't come back.
If people start dropping him because of what happened, then I would pick him up immediately.
The Ravens are playing Pittsburgh this week, and that's just a wash game anyways. And then come next week, J.K. Dobbins is going to be the lead back with 15 carries. He's gotten 15, 12, 7, and 15. So
can we talk about the fact that Justice Hill is currently projected for more points on Yahoo than Gus Edwards is?
Both are getting 2 points.
It's just amazing that a guy like Justice Hill could be just.
They also have to wear masks during the game.
Yeah, so. Who is Justice Hill?
Exactly. He has not had a single carry all season. I think he had 1 catch for 3 yards last week. That is the only thing he's done all year. Yet they have him projected for more than Gus Edwards.
Maybe Yahoo knows something. You don't know.
Yahoo doesn't know anything. Yahoo is brutal.
So I just want to mention a few names that if they're on waivers, they could be league-winning guys if their starter goes down. Alexander Madison on the Vikings. He is the backup to Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook has a bad injury history. Madison's only owned at 33% of leagues. If you're the Cook owner, he should be on your bench. If you're playing against the Cook owner, put him on your bench and just watch him kind of tilt every time Dalvin Cook is slow to get up. Another guy, Tony Pollard. If Zeke somehow gets injured or goes down to illness again, Tony's only owned in 19% of leagues. Tony still gets carries with Zeke being the main guy right now, but if Tony was to get the bulk of the carries, who knows what could happen.
Yeah, he had that really good run last week.
Yeah. Another guy, he's owned in 60% of leagues, Jamal Williams on the Packers. He already currently gets a good amount of work as Aaron Jones' handcuff, but when Aaron Jones went down and it was just Jamal Williams, he was putting up 15-plus points a week. He's a guy who could win you the league, especially with the Packers having the third easiest schedule for running backs for fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I think another guy is I just blanked on his name. Guy down in Latavius Murray in New Orleans. He's still putting up points. He could be an actual flex guy for people even right now with Kamara. He's probably the number one handcuff to have. Because I dealt with Kamara last year, and he goes out. It sucks. But Wayne Gallman is a guy who I want to throw out there. I know he's only 45% available, owned in 55% of leagues, but he's clearly the number one guy there. He's their favorite guy.
He's scoring 4 or 5 straight weeks.
He's a legitimate RB2.
He has 14 plus or 12 plus in half PPR in 4 straight weeks. So you beat Chris with him 2 weeks ago in your other league, which was pretty funny to hear because he was so pissed you beat him with DeAndre.
Anytime you beat Chris,
Swift and Wayne Gallman, and that was that. He's clearly their guy. Deion Lewis is their pass catching guy, and obviously Devonta Freeman's just not the guy anymore. Hasn't really been for the past year and a half, 2 years. Wayne Gallman, if he's available, he should not be available. He is the Giants guy, and the Giants are also probably the only team that's really turning it around. in the NFC East, I know the Cowboys just had a good game, but it's Andy Dalton. We know he could throw four interceptions and a half if he tries.
The worst part about the NFC East is that every single team in the moment feels like they're turning it around, while also still all being awful.
I think the Eagles are going backwards. They're like the other teams are turning around. They got Alex Smith in Washington, but like, yeah, I think the Giants have the best shot at making the playoffs, and I think having a guy like Wayne Gallman is going to help you in your fantasy season.
So some tight ends I want to mention, because right now, if you don't have Travis Kelce, tight end has been a pain in the butt all year for you. So some guys are currently sitting on waivers who might be worth picking up. Jordan Reed on the 49ers, owned in 15% of leagues. We all know Jordan Reed's been a very talented tight end over the single years, but he's been an awful injury-prone kind of guy. But he is in an offense that features the tight end. Problem is, as I mentioned, he's injury-prone, and then he's playing with a backup quarterback who might not be much of a downgrade versus their projected starter. And the other tight end, Ross Dwelly, is also active in the passing game, so if you want to flip that coin to see which of the two tight ends is the main feature guy going forward, you're welcome to take that chance. Another guy, Robert Tonyan on the Packers, owned in 46% of leagues. Last week, he went 5 for 41 and a touchdown versus the Colts. I think he's super unpredictable. His quiet games, is Mercedes Lewis going to be the guy that falls into the end zone? Or will everything just go to Devontae Adams? Another guy owned in 54% of leagues, Logan Thomas, tight end on the Washington football team. Quarterback's Alex Smith, which brings stability to the passing game, but he has a super hard schedule to end the year for tight ends. Dalton Schultz has been up and down all year. On the Cowboys, 21% of leagues owned. Andy Dalton is back, and with that, he went 4 for 25 and a touchdown. Touchdown was super wide open. It was definitely just a missed call in coverage, but he's a shot in the dark kind of guy.
Yeah, the Cowboys love their tight ends.
I like Dalton Schultz. Andy Dalton, think about, let's go back 6 years ago. Who was this guy?
Tyler Eifert.
Tyler Eifert.
Now
Who's this guy now? Dalton Schultz. Could have been Blake Jarwin. We missed out on an amazing season.
Yeah.
He could have caught 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. We don't know, but we'll never know. So
We'll never know.
The guy who loves his tight ends the most goes to the team that loves their tight
I
ends
was
the most.
pushing for the Blake Jarwin
It's a big
breakout year, but
I do want to throw one guy in there. Now he's my guy, Seattle Seahawks guy, Will Dissly, as known as Big Montana. He's owned in 1% of leagues right now.
didn't even know he was still playing, honestly.
Yeah, he's had 2 horrendous season-ending injuries back-to-back years he's played, but he's the next tight end up, I believe, with Olsen being out for the year. But before he got injured, Olsen's
I didn't know that. Oh, that sucks. Come on, Greg.
So before he got injured, he was putting up elite tight end numbers over the first 2 years of his career. He's on the same pace that Gronk, Jimmy Graham, George Kittle, and Kelce were on. Out of those names, Will Dissly was actually first in catch percentage, third in yards per catch, first in yards per target, and second in touchdowns per game of the likes of Gronk, Graham, Kittle, and Kelce. Now, I think the bigger issue is DK Metcalf has really taken over all the red zone work that tight ends would traditionally get in the Seattle passing offense.
That's a biased opinion.
I'd say it's a pretty unbiased opinion because that's just true.
Will Dissly was very good last year. I had him in fantasy, and he was catching touchdowns left and right, and then he got hurt end of the season. They brought in Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen's clearly going to get those 5-yard dump-off passes on the side, and then Will Dissly's just kind of blown away on the side. Now that Greg Olsen's actually out, he could have some fantasy relevance, but then again, it's like Travis Kelce or no one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Here's the thing: is the tight end world is so barren. It like you could try to stream anyone, and they will have a chance of being number 2 tight end of the week. But behind Travis Kelce,
It's like you pick someone up, you're getting 4 to 8 points. If you have like a middle tier guy like Darren Waller, Hawkinson, I couldn't even name like.
I wouldn't say they're military at this point. They're actually top
Goddard
tier.
like 7 to 12, and Travis Kelce 28. Like that's literally what we've come to with our tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say you have Kelce and Waller as your top 2, and besides that, there's only because Waller is one of Derek Carr's favorite targets, has been for the past year and a half. Besides that, you take a chance and you hope for the best.
Yeah.
Just really, you can play a matchup and it still won't happen for you. You just never know. So if you can find a guy like Dalton Schultz who's on a team that loves their tight ends and a quarterback that loves them, go ahead. If you can find a guy like Jordan Reed who's nasty when he's healthy, like he's been one of the best tight ends when he's healthy over the past 5 years. Problem is, that guy gets hurt every 4 games.
There's a walking concussion.
And Kittle might be out for the rest of the year. We don't know what's going to happen in San Francisco. You got Jimmy G out. Debo's supposed to be coming back this week. Mostert's still nowhere to be found. That team's just, they're not the same team that they were last year. There's no point in rushing Kittle back if he's not really able to go, especially because fantasy ends in week 16 normally. You could get lucky and keep Jordan Reed as your tight end, who could be a big guy.
Yeah, Kittle's done for the year.
I don't know if he's done. Like, there's a chance he comes back, but it's more likely than not that I'm going to say that Jordan Reed will be the number 1 guy if he stays healthy, which has always been his biggest question mark.
Any last points, Brian?
No.
Okay.
If Eric Ebron is on your waiver wire, I don't know why he's on your waiver wire. He's 22% available, but go get him. Like, Big Ben loves him. That's all I want to say there.
Good addition. And with that, we're just going to dive into our first quick TV timeout. So give us a few seconds and we'll be right back with the show. Welcome back to the show. We're about to dive into football talk that's league specific. Now, we will be talking about guys that you may have in your own league, so we still can provide some good fantasy information about these players, but we're going to be talking about the league that we play in specifically. Now, diving in, ranking the flex guys from week 11, the top 6. Aiden comes in as number 6 with J.D. McKissick, projected 10.1, came out with 8.4. John played Tyler Boyd, projected 12.2, finished with 13. Gatsy played C.D. Lamb, projected 9, came out with 14.6 with an amazing touchdown catch. Derek, Devontae Parker, projected 11.5, finished with 15.1. Now, I was close to getting number 1 back-to-back weeks. I played Antonio Gibson, projected 13.2, came out with 16.9. But Jake, with Curtis Samuel, projected at 8.8, came out with a 17.4. Now, going into week 12.
So, my pick might actually change, too. I'm not set on Fulgham. Antonio Brown is still available. I just really like that matchup with Seattle. But more likely than not, I will end up going with Antonio Brown in that spot.
Will Fuller.
Will Fuller.
By far. Yeah, you can't pick your own player, Brian. That's totally not allowed.
All right, fine. I'll pick
yes,
someone else.
just let me, help you be nice to you for a second. Don't get used to it. Will Fuller's by far the best option on this board. He's wide receiver 1 for Houston. He's playing on Thanksgiving Day. He's a lock for roughly 10 targets, probably a score. Start Will Fuller every chance you get, fella.
I mean, I like Antonio Gibson against Dallas. He's been consistent for the past couple of weeks. Definitely on the Gibson train now, just for the touchdown dependency. He gets 15 to 20 carries a game. Alex Smith's definitely moving the ball now. Other than that, I mean, it's got to be Will Fuller, but depending on who Chris Godwin's playing, it's also a very good start. So I'd go with a mix between Gibson, Fuller, and Chris Godwin.
You can't pick 3 people.
Well, they're also close to each other. It's kind of tough to pick one.
So Godwin's going against the 49ers.
Oh,
I think I'm still going Antonio Gibson. I think Will Fuller close second, but I think if you have a guy like Antonio Gibson who is a legitimate RB1, RB2, or probably RB2, you start him at flex, and that's just a blessing to have a guy like that, which clearly you are blessed with that.
Yeah, Mike Evans too. I mean,
You can't not say Mike Evans, but yeah.
It's hard to not pick a Bucs wide receiver just as a flex if he gets the touchdown, the love from Brady that week. I pick Gibson, but I can't pick my own guy, so I think it's also one of those situations where it could also be a toss-up between Will Fuller and Deontay Johnson, just because one of those guys is going to either get 100 yards in a touchdown or somewhere in that spectrum, especially with the Pittsburgh wide receiver room. There's so many guys to cover, you have no idea who could end up with the touchdown, but it could be Deontay Johnson this week.
Baltimore's got a good defense, but not enough to cover 4 different guys. All
right, so the current standings for our league, I come in at number 1. My team, DK Country, at 9-2. Chris's Hayden Tyreek is at 7-4. Aiden's The Morgue is at 7-4. Juan's Shiloh Jr. I'm not acknowledging his recent team name because it's just a team name for 1 week. He's also at 7-4. And then John's team at Gatsy's Pit Stain stands in 5th place at 6-5. And Andrew's Alex's team has also rounding out playoffs projections at 6-5. Teams on the outside looking in: Thal, with an extra 5 L's for all of his losses, is standing at 6-5. Quintorris Lopez has dropped from 6th to 8th, and Gazzi's team is sitting at 5-6, while Brian's team is currently in 9th place. The injured reserves at 5-6.
Oh my God! What's the weather like down there?
And then to go along, these teams: Messina's Show Me the Money at 3-8, Derek's Thal Take My Johnson at 3-8, and Jake's Burners at 2-9 have all been eliminated from playoffs.
So I just want to start off this segment with a little bit of a throwback to last week. Just to listen.
Andrew's team, who can't even start a full lineup this week, and he's gonna have to start someone like Zach Pascal.
Yeah, not a
We're
situation.
talking
where
3 wins in a row, potentially sneaking into the playoffs, and we'll see what happens.
Nice. Now moving on to...
And number 2.
Again, Andrew cannot start a full lineup this week, and he's going to have to pick up 3 guys off the waiver wire to play against me, and he's going to be projected around 93 to 94 points, and I don't know if I'm just crazy or not, but I don't think that's enough to win.
So leading into our...
All right, so to go off of that, that actually was enough to win because Brian put up a solid 77.78 to Andrews. He didn't even make that projection, Brian. 87.94. So I just needed.
I'm sorry that Tim Patrick caught a 61-yard pass to win the game. I'm sorry that MVS caught a 35-yard pass to end the game, and I only lost by 10 points. I am sorry for picking up Adrian Peterson when I thought he'd get the bulk of the carries, but Matthew Stafford's thumb is definitely hurting him. I am sorry that Aiden is sitting in 3rd place right now with the 7th least amount of points, and I'm sorry that Juan's also sitting in 4th when he has 1,120 points for, but yet he has more points against, which is just sad to see in a 4th place spot.
I think the best part
there too.
about Aiden's team and Juan's team, both sitting at 7 and 4, is that they're literally 1 point apart from each other.
Oh, no, it's not even 1 point. It's like 0.5, 0.6 or something. It is brutally close. That's why
if Robert Woods didn't have that 6-yard loss...
As soon as Robert Wood caught that last one for him to beat Chris yesterday, that's all I needed. I was done. I said no more scoring for them, and they listened to me. So but either way, it would have made it even better because I get to play Juan this week. And when I beat his he's going to drop, even if he wasn't 3rd right above me at 4th, he's going to drop all the way down to 7th or 8th. And it's going to just be a really nice sight to watch Shiloh just go boom, 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 boom out of the playoffs. Just so I told Gatsy he was going to be from week 6 on. So
Yahoo's current playoff projections has me at first keeping a bye week at 11-2. Chris winning out, going 9-4, keeping his bye week. Has Aiden in 3rd place at 9-4. Has your team John at 8-5 in 4th place. Then Brian pushing
who?
Brian, your team.
Wait, what place?
Has 5th place.
Oh, okay. I hope you score more than 77 points.
Sneaking into playoffs at 7-6
anymore.
And then Juan's team holding on to the 6th spot, going 7-6 as well. And just missing is Alex's team at 6-7, and Thal at 6-7.
Ooh.
How's that? Oh, all right. So the one caveat that I have to this, I know you have a full lineup ready for this, but I think hot take. I think Thal's gonna beat Chris in week 13, and I think Thal's gonna take over that last playoff spot, and I think I'm gonna take that bye in that 2nd bye.
So speaking into our ifs, ands, or buts scenario, I've clinched playoffs, and the only way I don't clinch the bye week is if I go 0-2 and I'm outscored by 160 points by either Aiden or Juan.
Oh, no, I need about 200. Yeah, I need about 200 points to outscore.
Okay, yeah. And then has Chris Coppola clinched playoffs? Yes, but there is a scenario, Chris. So at worst, Chris goes 7-6. For Chris to be bounced, Jake has to win this week by beating Chris. Aiden and Juan each win 1 more game. John wins 1 more game and it has a 16-point edge over Chris, or goes 2-0. Then Andrew need to win out and Thal need to win out by beating Chris in week 13.
Not likely.
Chris is not. No, he might lose against Thal. There's no shot he loses against.
But he will lose week 1 of the playoffs. That's for damn sure.
That's true. Someone is to be sure. He will lose. He's not going to listen to this podcast anyway, so we can talk as much crap as we want.
Watch him drop out of the bye and watch him lose week 1.
If he listened to this podcast, maybe he wouldn't have the chance of falling out of playoffs.
Exactly. Hey, even if I don't get that bye and I make it through the first round of playoffs, you were saying that Steelers matchup in Week 15.
Also, I
Very
haven't brought up the stat yet, but Juan has won every single game by less than 8 points. He's beaten me by 0.7. He's beaten Chris by 0.9. Jake dropped 9 points against him when he dropped 74 points in a week. And yet he is sitting in, what place is he sitting in? Fourth. Jeez. He's sitting in 4th place. And if we go to the power rankings, we look at it, it goes John as a top dog, then Berkey, then Chris. Top 3 teams, I would say. Then Messina, surprisingly. Thal, me, and then we got Aiden, the morgue. And then we keep on going with Andrew, Gatsy, Jake, Derek, and then we saved the one for the best for the last, which is Juan at 511 points. Yet he continues to win week after week.
I'm the only diamond in the league.
You have a very good team.
Can we talk about the fact that Jake Goedert tried to sell off his entire team, yet actually made his team?
We'll get to that point for the end of the year podcast.
All right.
So to continue with the ifs, ands, or buts, Aiden, if you win out, you stay in playoffs.
Yes, sir.
But there are a few scenarios where your heart could get broken. In the scenario that you go 1-1, and I would say these are the scenarios that are the most likely. If you somehow lose to Juan, and Juan goes 1-1, and then John wins out, Andrew wins out, and Thal wins out and scores 28 points more than you, then unfortunately you might fall to the 7th seed.
Oh, no, I can definitely see it.
Yeah.
I can't see it, but I could see how it could be a thing.
In the crazy scenario where you go 0-2 losing to Juan and Jake, all Juan, John, Andrew, and Thal all have to go 1-1, and you fall out if you don't outscore Thal.
So if Andrew doesn't beat you this week, which we are all laughing inside about, I'm in, right?
Yeah, Andrew beat me week 1 of the season. He crushed me.
Yeah, that sounds like
there wasn't even a manager then.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can also talk about the fact that Derek won the championship 2 years in a row with the team that was auto-drafted, and also got some collusion helped in the middle, but,
Aiden's team is sneaky good because it's actually been since week 4. Aiden hasn't scored over 110 points in a single week.
I also want to bring that up because...
Oh, wait, it keeps going. Hold on, wait. Week 3.
No, all right, yep.
Points.
All right, week 1, brutal week. Both Nick Chubb and Austin Ekeler decided to do jack shit. Nick Chubb at 5.1, Austin Ekeler at 9.2. Those are, I had the 10th pick in this year's draft. Is it 10? Yeah, it was 10. 10th pick out of 12. And I got Chubb and Ekeler as my top 2 picks. We clearly know how that went. Terrible first week. Second week, put up a nice 146. That is showing what my team can do when healthy. And I had to put Corey Davis in the lineup because A.J. Brown got hurt. And I still put up 146. I had Malcolm Brown. We can also talk about the fact that Dak Prescott's foot went sideways like Gordon Hayward. But week 3, 130 points. And then week 4, travesty happened, and I lost both my running backs within a 1 minute, maybe 1.5 minute span of each other.
So I think
both in the first quarter.
We could all go with this into like one of the last segments of a later podcast. We cry our hearts out about the what could have been.
Oh, I just wanted the only point I was trying to make there is the fact that my team, when healthy, puts up 130 easy, and it's not even healthy yet, and I'm already in the playoffs.
Right.
It's just. You guys need to be worried.
To move on to the next team, Juan's team has a very similar situation as Aiden because out of the playoff teams, they don't have the most points scored. So in the scenario that Juan goes 1-1, loses to Aiden, but wins versus Brian. If Aiden goes 1-1 and keeps the point differential, if Romney wins out, Andrew wins out, and Thal wins out by outscoring Juan by 29, Juan falls out. In the scenario that Juan goes 1-1 and he wins versus Aiden and loses to Brian, Aiden goes 1-1, John wins out, Andrew wins out, and Thal wins out again with the point differential. Juan could fall out. In the scenario that Juan goes 0-2, Aiden, John, and Andrew and Thal all just have to go 1-1, and Juan falls out if he doesn't outscore Thal.
So Juan's falling out.
Most likely.
He has to play me and Brian and stuff. Although CMC, I wanted to bring up this trade earlier. Brian is on the losing end of a horrific trade, like even worse than the Joe Mixon
So
one.
You have
Brian
to take a gamble on
started
something
off on
like that when your
the
entire team gets
winning
injured.
side of this trade, but has now fallen to the losing side of this trade, which we will get to in the later weeks where we can look back on the past few weeks and see how that's fallen out.
There's another soundbite I was going to bring up, but, I didn't want to
Yeah.
put Brian on that big of a spot.
But we'll put him on that spot.
Sorry, you won't be invited
towards
back
the
to this
end.
podcast anyways.
That's okay.
To continue on to the
I'll
next
take my
team,
winnings and walk away.
John, you're at 6-5. If you go 1-1, Andrew and Thal would have to win out, and you would have to lose to Gats by being outscored by 130 to Gats. In the scenario that you go 0-2,
30.
Andrew wins out and takes 5th place. Then one of Thal, Gats, and or Brian will win out. Then you'd be bounced. For Andrew's team, if in the scenario that he goes 1-1, Thal goes 2-0, or 1-1 and outscores Andrew by 50 points over the next 2 weeks, he falls out. Or if Gats wins out, Andrew falls. If Brian wins out and scores more than 30 points over Andrew, Andrew falls out again. If Andrew goes 0-2, he falls out. If Thal goes 1-1, Gats goes 1-1, or Brian goes 1-1 and scores more than 30 points to them over the next 2 weeks. So that loss this week to Andrew just totally hurt your chances of playoffs, but you're still alive, Brian.
I'm definitely still alive. But it's also another good point is that I clinched buys in 2 of my other leagues that were more money. So I'm still positive for my other 2 leagues. And it's like, if I make the playoffs here, probably not going to win. I'm assuming it's going to be either you, John, or Chris, because you guys are the best teams. Aiden's sorry team will never even come close to winning a championship in this league, and Juan's sorry team will never even come close. So I'm really excited to see which one of you 3 pulls out the championship this year. And
I won last year.
So for the 3 teams on the outside looking in, Thal, if you're listening to this, if you go 2-0, you need Andrew to go 1-1. Thal, if you go 1-1, you need Andrew to go 0-2. Gatsy, you need to go 2-0, and you need Andrew to also go 0-2. But if you end up going 1-1, you also need Andrew to go 0-2, and you need Thal to also go 1-2. Brian, if you go 2-0, you also need Andrew to go 1-1. Thal needs to go 1-1, and Gatsy has to go 0-2. Brian, if you go 1-1, you need Andrew to go 0-2, Thal to go 0-2, and Gatsy to go 0-2.
A lot of ifs.
Yeah.
A lot of ifs. Still possible. If I go 2-0, though, it's looking very good to make.
So that brings us into our mighty matchups. So the first game I want to talk about is your game versus Thal, John. Thal's projected around 117. You're projected around 114. For Thal, the big factors could be the health and use of Chris Carson, and then Lamar versus the Pittsburgh defense. For John, your winning probability right now with the way you have your lineup set comes out to the fantasy outcome of the Cardinals versus Patriots game. Because right now you have Kyler, Jacoby Myers, and Damian Harris in your lineup.
Yeah, I took out Damian Harris. I'm starting David Montgomery. I am now projected 120 versus his 117. I feel very confident, mostly because my team is better, 1. And 2... Actually, no. That's really it. My team's better than his.
Dude,
I'm just hoping that Kyler Murray can do well against Patriots defense, and his shoulder's doing well. As Aiden has exclaimed, he has Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin could be hit.
It's more the matchups that I'm excluding to. Chris Godwin versus Kansas City. Anyone versus Kansas City, you gotta expect them to put up a decent amount of points because you have to be throwing against Kansas City. Keenan Allen against Buffalo. We both know what Herbert and Josh Allen can do, and that is score points. That could literally be a 45 to 40 point game, as Brian pointed out a couple days ago. And Zeke might get screwed. He's going up against Washington. Very good run defense, very underrated run defense, very underrated defense in general. But Chris Carson coming back, I think John's going to lose.
No, I'm going to win. You want to know why? Because don't sleep on Terry McLaurin.
To bring us to the next game, huge playoff implications because it's Andrew's game versus me. So in this scenario, all the other teams in the league are most likely rooting for me to win because if Andrew loses, that opens up the door for a bunch of other teams to either stay in the playoffs or find their way in. So I think the key factors for that is Rodgers versus the Chicago defense. And for me, if Taysom Hill keeps rolling, I'm perfectly fine. If Taysom Hill decides to disappear versus a middle-of-the-road defense, that could open the door for Andrew to sneak by me. Another big game is Derek versus Brian. Derek's projected around 108. Brian's projected around 114. This is a must-win for Brian. for Derek, will Big Ben be successful versus Baltimore? And right now, Brian, at the moment, I had health of Kenny Golladay because he was in your lineup. That's a little in question. I think there's been an update about that. So how do you feel right now?
I feel that my quarterback is now Josh Allen, and I will not have 7.28 points from Matt Ryan. I believe that Duke Johnson still sucks. I believe that Will Fuller is disgusting. I think that Calvin Ridley is a top 3 receiver in the league. I think that Dallas Goedert is a touchdown machine. I think Christian Kirk has had 2 bad weeks. He plays New England.
Machine, he says.
Dallas Goedert?
Yeah.
In the red zone.
Yeah, Zach Ertz is a touchdown machine. I don't know about Goddard.
Goddard is
Goddard
a
can get
base.
some yards. He's not a touchdown machine like that.
Fine. We'll give him yards. He's good. He gets a lot of yards. He's better than most tight ends. He's the number 6 tight end this week. And then I got Kirk, Sanders. I mean, I feel pretty good, but then again, with my luck and the injuries that I've had this season, who really knows? I'll probably end up losing by 150 points, knowing me.
I've never heard someone say that one of their players that they're starting as an actual running back and not a flex option sucks. Like, straight up sucks.
Some people get at that point in their league when they didn't draft enough running backs to begin the year.
It's good to know.
The only hope is that he's playing Detroit, and Detroit is so bad that he could score a touchdown and salvage this week.
So for the best part of the Mighty Matchup segment, if Jake wins, Chris falls to 7-5 and would end up falling to 3rd or 4th place, and could be huge for people trying to steal a bye week or in the long shot attempt that Chris could technically still fall out of playoffs. But it's a huge long shot. But Jake has proven that his team can come out of nowhere and bite you in the butt if you're not watching.
There's one thing I want to bring up about Chris's team. Mike Davis. Obviously, Nick Chubb coming back has not really hurt Kareem Hunt because he didn't explode like people thought he was going to with Chubb out. But Mike Davis with CMC back only put up like 6 points. Chris does have James Robinson. I'm pretty sure James Robinson's playoff matchups are not easy. You got the next 2 weeks, Cleveland, Minnesota, but you got Tennessee, Baltimore, and Chicago. Those are his playoff matchups. I don't like those. Like, if CMC, the real question I want to bring up, where's CMC at? And is he going to come back and hurt fantasy owners who have Mike Davis?
He is doubtful for this week, but is expected to begin practicing.
He has a bye week in week 13. They're going to hold him out this week. He's going to go through the bye week, and then they're going to bring him back week 14, assuming they don't lose 2 games in a row and completely fall out of playoff contention and shut him down for the year.
So if you have Mike Davis in your lineup, you have to be preparing for
playoffs.
Someone else
No,
to
it's
have
week
as a
13.
running back then.
Oh, true.
So he's back for first week of the
So this is most likely your last week with relying on Mike Davis.
That's what I wanted to try and figure out was where's Mike Davis at in fantasy relevance? And clearly it's not much more.
I think the majority of people who have been relying on Mike Davis in fantasy are the CMC owners. Chris is just one of the few that probably scooped up Mike Davis before the CMC owner could, and has unfortunately had to rely on him because his other running backs have not been as reliant. But that is the hole you fall into when you go wide receiver heavy at the beginning of the draft versus having a split draft or running back heavy.
Yeah, but you can't knock him. Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill are
They
nasty.
have been killing it.
They are nasty.
Yeah, it's got a good squad, but it'll come crashing down. Just wait.
So
I've been waiting for a while.
Yeah.
It's still not fully happening.
So to wrap up the show, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your football friends. It is waiver wire day. Put in your waivers, and then make sure to remember to check who got dropped in the morning so you can swoop up and pick someone up. And also remind players to adjust their lineups unless you're playing them. And also don't play a player on Thanksgiving just to have a player to watch. Play your best players regardless.
Made that mistake many a time.
I got one more thing to add. Adam Thielen had a positive test and then a negative COVID test after having close contact, and that's why he's on the COVID list right now. As of right now, the Vikings are working with the NFL to figure out his status. He's still on the COVID list, and there's probably 3 or 4 more tests throughout the week to be done. But Adam Thielen is actually very much in the air for this week, so have a replacement in mind just in case.
Breaking news. You heard it here first.
And to all the Adam Thielen owners out there, that's fantastic news. So cheers.